everybody. Welcome to the Be That Lawyer podcast. I am Steve Fretzin, the host. Been doing this for a while. Simon, about 5 years. I've been doing this show. We're hitting, I don't know, in the 475 episodes, something in that range.
Wow.
Yeah. How are things across the pond?
How are they? They're just fine. It's a pleasure to be joining you. Firstly, Steve, you're a legend, and
Legend in my own
I'm
mind.
flattered. I'm flattered that I made the cut.
Well, listen, if I want to not feel like a legend, I can talk to my teenager. He'll knock me down a couple pegs real fast. But you and I are both big Manchester City fans, and I don't know what's been going on with them lately, but they seem to do well, and then they seem to kind of choke at the end. So I don't know if is that just this time of year thing?
Oh, I've no idea. I sat, the other night they were 3-0 up with I think 75 minutes to go, and we were my family looking around each other thinking, thank goodness we're back in the old city are here. 15 minutes later it was 3-3. Oh, I don't know what to make of it. I don't know.
Could be a real heart flipper. But I just enjoy the Premier League over here in the U.S. We have so many other sports that compete against watching. But thank God for YouTube. I'm able to watch all the top Premier League games in about
Yeah.
7 to 10 minutes each. So I'm really thrilled. But since we're not going to talk about Premier League soccer for the time, we're going to talk a little bit about business development and law. And you go way back with that. And let's start off with the quote of the show, which I love to do. And this one comes from a client of yours, which I find fascinating that it's not a famous quote other than the fame of someone saying this to you. And it includes an expletive, which is wonderful. It's the difference is you give a shit. And so tell us about that story. Tell us how that quote came about, and then we can get into your background a little bit.
Okay. It was a short, sharp quote which culminated, brought together everything I tried to achieve in my law firm. And that was the proof that it worked. And what it came from was a highly sophisticated, big spending client. And he said, I've used law firms around the world. Every lawyer in your firm that I touch in every team gives a shit. And
Mm,
he said, that didn't happen by accident, did it?
yeah.
And that was it. And we'll get onto it. That is the key to business development.
Yeah. I think the client loyalty myth, and you tell me why you think this is a myth, used to be if I provide good service at a fair rate, right, that I will have this client forever. And not necessarily the case anymore, right?
It's not the case. In fact, if you just bear with me, I'll go against some of your wording. It doesn't even have to be a good rate. There's cars out there. I talk about Ford, Audi, Ferrari. There's enough Audi buyers out there. They'll pay a good rate for a good service. You don't need to be competitive. I always, in my consultancy work, I always comb law firms' websites before I go in there, and I'll just give them a list of words to remove from their website. And one of them is always, we're competitively priced. Take
Hmm.
it off.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking about money and rates and competitively it's not the way to go. And I also find like it's things that you say that aren't really a differentiator aren't necessarily things you need to talk about and put up front.
Yeah, you're right, Steve. So many law firms' websites are just hot air, to put it mildly, and they wouldn't make me use a law firm. And all this, we put you center of everything. We're client focused. I've used these firms. It doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, we need to take a step back to get into your background because you have one of the most extraordinary backgrounds of anyone I've had on the show. And obviously you guys have picked up on the accent, right? We're talking to Simon McCrum, of the managing director of McCrum Consulting. And before you got into that, you were like an absolute rock star business developer. Do you want to take us back to that?
Yeah, I will, Steve. I'm a solicitor. I'm a lawyer. I qualified in 1990. I showed other skills. I had a managing partner who seized on that. Why don't you do more of that and less of that? And the more was more business development. The less was legal work. And I moved and I ended up becoming an equity partner in a 50 million turnover firm, 50 million sterling, doing only business development. And
Yeah.
that was because of results that I obtained.
Yeah. And it's hard for some lawyers to kind of wrap their heads around that, because it's so rare that you have someone that just does business development and doesn't bill the hours or doesn't necessarily manage all the client relationships and things like that. So
Yep.
how did that structure work for you? And another question that lawyers are going to want to know is, how did you turn the business over? Because it's one thing to, to make the sale and to get the business in, but then to say, oh, and by the way, it's not me, right? You're going to be working with these strangers over here.
Yeah. So the one of the most underused, it's a great question, Steve. One of the most underused tools in business development is the truth.
Mm.
Uh, if I can use the word, bullshit is used a lot. Just let's start with the truth. And I used to start my conversations off on the first minute was, I'm part of a great team. We have people who do all sorts, and they do it in a certain way. That was my language. So as soon as somebody said, we need this. So I can think of a great example. I was out one night. I met some accountants. It was 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and I wasn't selling me. I was selling us, and that's a BD tool that I like using. Selling us, and the following morning, 9 o'clock, I got a call from that accountant. Frankly, it had been a drunken evening, so I couldn't remember him. And he said, I've got a client with me now. It's Friday morning. We've got a massive problem, and it's a property's being sold on Monday. We need to stop something. I said, I've got just the team. I brought them in 10 o'clock. We had a 10 a.m. Friday morning. We had a meeting. They had a meeting. Funnily enough, Steve, I then went home because I was so hungover. And over the weekend, on Saturday and Sunday, I came into Manchester city centre, and all the lights were on in our offices because of this case. The lawyers were running around, and I was able to think, I'm not doing any of the billing work, but if it wasn't for me, that wouldn't be happening right now.
Yeah.
We build £1 million. We build
Wow.
over £1 million
Okay.
on that.
Man. Well, so I think what we're getting to is the key to success in business development is to be out late drinking. No?
Yeah. Well, interestingly, when I was, if you like, persuaded or off invited to switch from billing to legal work, that's what everyone thought, including me. And I have a book of stories that involved going out, networking, either drinking or not drinking, but whatever, just being
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
I've got a book of, it works, but it's really hard work. And the real skill came for me anyway, where it became exponentially more valuable as a contribution was generating work when I was asleep. And I don't mean during the day. Helping other people to generate work, setting up schemes that generate work. One of the questions is when you and I were kicking this around, what is BD? Most people will say it's going out and meeting people and getting a case. I think BD is much broader than that, and I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah. Well, give me your take on it.
Okay, what's BD? It's developing business, not you going out, Steve, or me going out, but by goodness, that can work amazingly. There's all sorts of things. Introducers, having an honest relationship with an introducer that sends work back. I mean, most BD people will say, yeah, we do reciprocity, as it's called. I bet you don't, because all too often those accountants or those bankers that you're having lunch with, they're having lunch with your competitors tomorrow. So the key is authenticity to me. Don't have 15 lunches. Have 3 relationships where you give,
Mm.
where you're watering the plant and they're watering yours, and you trust each other. That, less do. I'm a firm believer, having done tons manically, do less better for more. And that kind of works. Another form of BD, when you some of my biggest results, Steve, were I mean, off the top of my head, I can think of a national brewery in the UK. We had a small debt recovery case for them, £2,000. No one wanted to touch it. It was getting ignored. I said, give it to me. I went to see the finance director because I was allowed to by my firm. I didn't need to bill every minute. I didn't have a billing target. I sat down with the FD and I said, tell me about this debt. Oh, he told me £2,000. It was nothing in their multi-million-pound stuff. But boy, it annoyed the directors because they drove past this hotel every morning on their way to work. And the guy had a new car and stuff. So I said, have you got many of these? Oh, he said, loads. I said, give me them all. I got a team chasing them, but then I briefed him on how he could avoid this happening again. Next thing you know, I'm saying to him, who looks after your property estate? Who looks after your employment? Who looks after your corp? Boom, boom, boom. We got it all. You
Mm.
know, that so business development, that's not going out and meeting a new guy or a new lady. That's looking after a client that was being ignored. And every law firm you that you deal with, Steve, they will have thousands of them.
Yeah. The
Double O
hidden
ones, I call them.
Simon, the hidden gem, and so this is the way I describe it, all right? And this is how I pick up business, by the way, as a coach, right? There's a table in front of lawyers that is piled with millions of dollars. It's right in front of them, and they're walking
Yeah.
around it day after day after day. Part of the reason is not that they don't know it's there. Part of the problem is it's uncomfortable. They don't have a system. They don't know the language. So it's like asking a client for a general counsel for an introduction to another general counsel, or asking, in addition to the intellectual property work we do, what else could we help you with? It's
Yeah.
those kinds of conversations that aren't happening at the level that they need to. And that's where I think a lot of that low hanging fruit business is. And lawyers just don't feel comfortable going after it. Maybe you could shine some light on that.
Yeah, they don't. So here's the first thing that I thought about when you were speaking there is not only do they not feel comfortable, they just won't because they're not rewarded for it.
Mm.
Their
Well,
money,
some of them. I mean, again, in the U.S., for example, they have originate. Well, if it's not your own client, you may not. But if it's your own client and you get introductions or you get more business,
yeah,
in the U.S., we have what's called originations, which is basically what
okay,
business did you originate? What did you bring in?
yeah,
So they would get credit. So they know it's
okay,
there, but it's amazing that they know it's there, but they still don't go after it because of the discomfort.
okay. Now, where does the discomfort come from? Sometimes it comes from lack of trust of their colleagues. And I, even today, I have law firms that say, well, you know, if we've got property work, there is no way I'm sending it to real estate work, no way I'm sending it to our team. They don't return calls, they
Yeah.
overbill. So you need trust. And the other thing is, actually, it's quite hard selling something that you don't powerfully believe in.
Well, yeah,
Now
yeah,
let's
that's definitely a problem. I thought you were going to say something else that's like that you don't know as much about. But when you say what you say, I was like, oh my God, you're right. If you don't believe in your partners, if you don't believe in the firm that you work with and for,
That's it.
then yeah, you're not going to sell more business. You're going to be afraid to bring it in
Now,
because it could light on fire.
now, if I tell you my law firm in the UK became the fastest out, there's 10,000 law firms here. Mine was the fastest growing because if you think most law firms, when they try and grow their business, they look out the window. Okay. I closed the curtains. I bricked the windows up.
Mm.
We looked inside, looked after our clients, and we got that powerful belief by delivering across every team a service promise, an absolute guarantee that or the client would think it was an amazing service all the time.
Yeah,
Sometimes I tell you, back at the ranch, it was chaos, but the
yeah,
client never didn't get it. But once you've got that belief, then what you're not asking your clients to sell. Sorry, you're not asking your partners to sell now. What you're instead doing is checking with, why don't you all check with your clients that they're all getting this from their other lawyers that they use? Because they're absolutely not. So we now had something powerful that we could boast of. It was called a service promise, literally a brand, and we believed in it. And we wanted our clients, our real estate lawyers wanted their clients to have that in employment terms as well. So it was all, you can't make partners introduce people. They've got to want to.
yeah. So there's a culture element to this, but I also think there's a relationship element, meaning even if my firm doesn't have the best culture from a standpoint of it being is all focused on service, you still may have to know the three, four, five attorneys at your firm that you do trust and that do provide high level of service
Yes.
and quality, and maybe focus on just selling them to the clients that you engage with, maybe not the whole firm, because not all lawyers are created equal in their competency, level of service, level of care. So I think you have to be very particular about who you refer your clients to, because if one burn could lose it all, which is I think one of their fears.
Yeah. And of course, and can I add to your list, Steve? Personality.
Yeah.
downright personality. Chalk and cheese sometimes does work, but often it doesn't. So if you can pick the right people as well, but the main thing is trust. If you've spent years building this client up and you send them down the corridor to the employment team who don't return the calls, I mean, I had that thousands of times
Yeah.
in other firms.
Yeah.
So when I had my own firm and I was able to pull it all together into a service pledge, it really worked.
So, like, let's get into because you had, based on my conversation with you and the research, like one of the largest books of business of anyone in the UK, and that didn't happen by accident. So, what were the two or three things that you did that made the difference between building an enormous book and someone who's still at the firm billing hours?
So I had that situation where I was still billing hours, but then the managing partner, a magnificent lady called Joy Kingsley, just said, "Listen, why don't we just take that all off you, and
Okay.
you can do even more of this." And then I moved
But
on.
but
Then I moved on.
even before she approached you, you were doing
Yeah,
things well enough on the BD front to get noticed and to get that offer.
yeah,
What were you doing to bring in the business that allowed her to approach you
yeah.
and make that offer?
So a lot of BD, you go. I mean, this kind of goes back to one of your early questions as well. One of the best ways to BD, business develop, is do a good job.
Yeah.
And boy, did I do a good job on my cases. I never went home without returning all calls. That all clients want is to know, push and tell, push the case, tell the client. That's it, push and tell. And that is your ticket to BD. Because then, if they're using other lawyers for other areas of work, other firms, you can rest assured one of two things, one or two things are going. They're not pushing the case, and the clients think it's a black hole. If you offer a different, and I was very, very good at looking after clients. So even as a junior client, and this is a lesson for us all, even as a junior lawyer, clients were giving me cases. I was delegating upwards. All they want is they're paying a lot of money. They want to be looked after as if they are my only clients. And I managed to succeed. You know, I wasn't a great lawyer technically, believe me.
Okay, there's referrals that can come in from being a great lawyer and being responsive. Were there other activities that you engaged in, networking or making calls, sending out emails, like proactive things that you were doing,
Yeah.
conversations you were having that other people weren't having?
Yeah, so this was a unique role. There was no one I could copy. There were no books on it back in the 90s. I had to make this up. So I started off doing what everyone thinks you do. So I had a billing target that was reduced to allow me to learn, frankly, at this stuff. So I remember one example. I opened the local paper, the Manchester Evening News, and I saw it said tonight, Bolton Wanderers Football Club, so it's a football stadium, charity dinner sponsored by, I can't remember the name of the company, PLC, Public Limited Company.
Yeah.
So I rang their marketing department. And I said, I see you've got a dinner tonight. Could I come, please? And they said, yeah, absolutely. A table? I said, I haven't got a table. Oh, they said, we'll put you somewhere. I said, thank you very much. I get to it. It's a charity dinner, black tie dinner. I don't know a single person there. And they say, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a slight difficulty. The guy comes on the microphone. We've got a slight difficulty. The charity auction can't take place tonight because the auctioneer is stuck in traffic. Unless, of course, ladies and gentlemen, we've got an auctioneer here.
And were you actually an auctioneer or no?
No, never done it in my life.
You son of a gun.
I ended up on the stage
Oh my God.
taking bids for prizes, Manchester United shirts, and that
Yeah.
having a well, and of course I got not of course, but I got the PLC as a client.
Yeah.
Now you make your own luck. Now that story, much as I'm proud of it, that's the kind of story that makes people switch off and think, oh, I can't do BD then.
Right.
If that's what,
I'm not the party person with the lampshade on the head at the
oh,
party.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they couldn't be more wrong. I always say to people, you can all do BD. Just be authentic. Don't try and be me.
Yeah.
Just be yourself.
Yeah.
But if you haven't, you can't. This is the problem. Law firms say to everyone, we expect you to do BD. Why doesn't the law firm give them some tools? And the biggest tool of the lot that everyone could be armed with, and they were in my firm, when I was the managing partner, everybody was armed with the tool. It was called our differentiator.
Mm.
And we had, I remember one Monday morning, the receptionist came in and said, Simon, I was at a dinner party on Saturday night. There was a businessman there. I told him about our service pledge, great service, every lawyer, every time. Told he'd like to talk to you. Sorry, that's called BD. The business expects too much from lawyers. It should give them a differentiator that they can all use. Then they can just be themselves.
Do you have a feeling about, and I teach differentiators. How do you find a differentiator, leverage a differentiator? But I would love to hear your take. Do you have like a secret sauce type of way of like, all right, so I'm X kind of attorney. This is, like a situation or maybe an example of one that you came up with for your firm or for yourself or someone else. Yeah, that'd be helpful.
So what I do, so this is what I do, Steve, with when I work with my law firms now, because they have these differentiators now and they use them. So I call it, so if I use the auto name Bentley, I call it, let's do Bentley Law. And Bentley Law is about the technical brilliance and the service excellence. That's Bentley Law. Then we've got to sell it at Bentley price. So we're developing business, but it's going to be nicely priced. Don't do Bentley Law and sell it at Ford price.
Right, right.
So how do we get to Bentley Law? The answer is you get the whole firm together, and we look at and I give them a scenario, and I said, here I am. Let's say, and I give two examples, depending on the firm. But let's say I'm a husband, and I get home at night, and there's a letter on the mantelpiece, and it says, from my wife, I've met a skiing instructor in France. I'm leaving you with the children. I'm taking the children with me. Okay. Now that happens all the time. And I ring a lawyer and I say to everybody around the room, now tell me how, here I am in my emergency need. It's 5 o'clock on a Friday night. It's weekend. The kids are about to be taken away. Ruin my life, please. What would you do? Tell me how you would make my predicament worse. And obviously, Steve, they come up with, we wouldn't take your call. We would give it to a beginner. We would give you a 10-page letter that you didn't understand. We would make mistakes. We would miss deadline. Sorry, that happens all the time. That's the worst things you can think of. It's happening every day in the people using lawyers. So let's do the opposite. What shall we do? Right, we won't take cases on that we can't deal with. We will not give anything to a junior. We will ring you back every day. We will, blah, etc. They will design the differentiator. You can't email them and say, hi, here we go. They've got to design it. Then they believe in it.
Yeah. You crowdsource within the firm.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
It's a lovely word, that crowdsource. Yes.
Yeah. And I also think there's something to be said about surveying clients, right? I mean, if clients know that you're great at something, and I'll give you a quick example. There's one firm in Chicago here that surveyed their clients, and they said the most important thing and the thing they did better than any other firm was responsiveness. So they focused on the differentiator being nobody responds faster than we do. And it was employment law. So it's like really critical.
Fast.
You need it fast. You just have a sexual harassment claim, you better call XYZ firm. So I think there's a lot of different ways to do that. But your point, I think, is that when you have a differentiator that is sticky and that people remember, it's something to fall back on and help you with your BD.
Yeah. So it's center stage in your you don't sell, they buy. It's a complete game changer. But here's the thing. There's plenty of law firms have got stuff on their website saying we're great at service and all that. The difference is the design, but then the delivery. The deliver on your, it's a promise, and you've got to deliver on your promise. And we were, my big saying, my law firm was, when there was 200 of us, when we were all in a room together, I used to say, if anyone in this room thinks we sell T-shirts, please leave. We change lives. That's what we do, and we return and we make the experience. It's not always enjoyable for them. It's the biggest stuff in their life. Let's make it an okay experience, as good experience as possible. We're going to deliver on it. And what we did, Steve, because I deal in concrete, not hot air. We designed a system. Now you can buy this stuff. It didn't exist when we designed our own. every 2 weeks, we texted the client automatically, and all it said was, are we A, B, or C? Excellent, okay, or poor? ABC. All that ABCs came in. We published it internally. We put it live, real time, on the front page of our website.
Mm,
To this day, I've never seen anyone else do that.
yeah.
And if anyone said, any client from any team said C, I rang them, the chief exec. I can't tell you what that did to clients.
Yeah.
Number one, crikey, something's happened. And who are you? I said, I'm the chief exec. You're who? Oh my goodness. And I saved, it was all part of it. No one was in trouble because everyone was trying hard. It just allowed us to show that we meant it.
Yeah.
That's a differentiator. Steve, my biggest mistake though, I didn't charge a Bentley price for what was undoubtedly Bentley service.
Yeah.
And I help law firms avoid that now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's sometimes the problem is people have a hard time sort of swallowing their own value because they want to keep their ego in check. So they charge what they think it should be, when in reality, their education, their experience, their performance, their service is Bentley, and they just can't see it, but the clients would gobble it up if given the chance.
Yeah. And in their own life, they're happy to pay, Audi price for an Audi quality, but just not me, because I can't.
Yeah.
But actually, here's the rub: business development. It's not goodwill development. It's busy. It has to be about money and profit, which brings me to one of the question marks I always have over law firm BD and marketing. It's only worth it if it increases the number of billable hours that are being done. If it doesn't, if the lawyers are going to do the same number of billable hours with or without your work, all you're doing is you're improving storage levels in your firm. But work's being, so BD, if you're doing BD, you need to do recruitment as well. Give yourself more vessels to fill, more lawyers. Then more billable hours are being done.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a cost, not an asset. And as you say, millions of pounds are piling up on desks.
You gotta feed the machine, and the machine's gotta have output, and it's gotta be as equal as possible. With that, Simon, we're gonna wrap up now. I want to share that you sent me so kindly The Perfect Legal Business and The Perfect Lawyer, right? These two books, and your books are the game-changing books of the show. So in 30 seconds or less, or a minute, tell everyone about these books and why you wrote them and what's in them.
Okay, it's a trilogy. You've got two there. The third is The Perfect Partner. It's coming out in Christmas. They're only available on my website, which is mccrum.legal. That's it. They are my confession. I've sold thousands of them in 55 countries. Managing partners tell me and lawyers and partners and team leaders around the world told me that's changed their life. And the reason I don't do e-copies, I don't do a podcast of it, it is for you to write all over. And the best thing I can tell you about those game-changing books is, beyond number, lawyers have said to me, did you write that book about our firm?
I noticed a story that was very similar to what we went through with you, right?
It's a simple book. It takes one bottle of wine to read each book, and I'm told that the people love my style.
Yeah, and they get better as you get through the wine. Maybe. I can goof with you. So let's wrap up with thanking our sponsors, the Law Her podcast. Check that out. Empowering women to be their best selves and live their best lawyer lives. Of course, Rankings.io, top player in the marketing space around the world, helping law firms bring in business. And I also just want to mention, everybody, that I've been writing for Above the Law for around 6 months now. I've got 4, 5, 6 articles up. So check me out. You can go into the magnifying glass on their website, type in my name, and you will get some of my best articles. The most recent one was about how to create content for LinkedIn or just for social media. So check that out, everybody. And Simon, if people want to get in touch with you, you already mentioned, was it McCrum.legal?
That's it.
Okay.
That's
any other things that they should check you out on?
No, if you Google me, there's tons of stuff there, and like webinars I've done for the UK Law Society and
Yeah.
conferences around the world. It all gets recorded, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show, sharing your wisdom. This has been an absolute joy. My intention is to keep in touch with you, to stay in line with you. I think there's more that we can collaborate on. So expect to for me to kind of sneak around behind you, and if I definitely want to come out and go to some Premier League matches. So, and I'm a fan of Premier League more so than a particular team. I just like watching, and Kevin De Bruyne is one of my favorite players of all time, by the way.
Who is?
Kevin De Bruyne,
Oh, legend.
legend.
Here's my water bottle.
Oh my God, that's awesome. All right, it
I
says
think it's
Manchester
leaking at the
City.
moment.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I know so many international lawyer coaches and friends that, they they like the Reds or they like the Spurs or they like, it's just so wonderful because I love all those teams. So anyway, we don't want to bore people though. All right. Simon, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your wisdom.
I've
Awesome.
thoroughly enjoyed my dealings with you, Steve. Well done. Thank you.
All right, all right. Thank you, everybody, for spending some time with Simon and I today on the Be That Lawyer with Fretzin podcast. We're here twice a week, every week, to help you be that lawyer, confident, organized, and a skilled rainmaker. Take care, everybody. Be safe, be well. We'll talk again soon.